Hey guys, Madeline here. I just wanted to thank you for stopping into the Learning Lab and give you some background on this session on writing your brand story. Emily Soccorsy was amazing enough to stop by and share with us all of her knowledge, both on what a brand is about and how branding is different from marketing. She also helped us ask key questions to allow us to move through this process of writing our brand story. Now, in addition to the amazing session, there is a workbook below. Make sure to take some time to download it so you can take these ideas and move them into action. Of course, if this session is super impactful for you, make sure to comment below or spread the word. Tell somebody you know about Learning Lab so they can get access to this awesome content. All right, enough from me. Here is your session on writing your brand story. Welcome everyone to Learning Lab. I am so excited. I was hopping up and down this morning gearing up for this session because Emily and I have been talking and planning and plotting maybe a little bit about it for a while. And it's a really, really important session in the story and in the journey that we're doing here at Learning Lab. Because, I really, when we first crafted this content lineup, and when I say we, it was like me waking up at like 3 a.m. and then I ran it by my team. I knew that one of the most important pieces and really truly most important foundations was this element of figuring out how to tell your story in the branding process. And so I was, seeing so many people that I admired and respected in the space. And one of the things that I saw them really do well to stand out and succeed was having a great brand story. And then I also saw these patterns of business owners who I knew had heart and knew had mission and had a real purpose in their business, but maybe weren't operating at that level because they hadn't really tapped in and taken the time to figure out how to tell that story inside their business. And so that was why this session became so important. And as soon as I started thinking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have Emily on because she is one of my favorite storytellers. She's one of my favorite brand experts, and she's just somebody that I love so dearly. So I'm super, super excited and honored to have her here today in the Learning Lab. So Emily, now the floor is yours. Take us
Oh,
away.
thank you. Well, first of all, I'm so glad to be here and so glad to be with this tribe of people that Madeline has brought together. So honored to be with you all and to share um, about writing a brand story and really being a brand. And so we're gonna take a dive through. I love questions and I love interactions. So I know we're gonna have plenty of time for that at the end. But if you get stuck on something that I'm talking about, feel free to just post that question in chat, and I'll try to swoop in and maybe
Yeah.
Madeline can give me a heads up
Yeah,
on
I'll triage
stuff.
Q&A so Emily can
Cool.
stay in full flow mode. So if you have
Yeah.
questions as they come up, know that I'll be keeping an eye on them. So that's awesome.
Right. All right. Without any further ado, let's get down to it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All righty.
I'm seeing it on my end.
Great. So want to start out with a little bit about, obviously we're here for writing your brand story, but a little bit about me to begin. So, our brands are not really things that are separate from us. They are who we are. So my brand, sort of the first brand that I think I ever really had was as an only girl. I was the only girl in my family. I had 3 brothers, and this is a photo of us with one of my beloved grandfathers. And I just love it because we're all smashed in together. So we were a very tight family, but I had this distinction of being the only, and I'm the second from the right, so I get snuggled in there in Grandpa's lap. And not only was I the only girl in my direct family, I was the only girl in like all the extended family, and that is really sort of a moniker that has stuck with me. And I had a lot of family friends that because I was the only girl, they would call me Miss. So they would call me Miss M. And that was sort of like who I was for the first part of my life. And sort of after that, I think the second brand that I really had and owned and was as a creative. So it's always tucked away in my room, writing stories, drawing pictures, making all my dolls come to life in these elaborate relationships and storylines. And so that kind of became my second brand. But all these years later, 40 some odd years later, the tables have turned. So no longer am I the only girl, but I have 2 daughters and a husband. And so my husband's the only boy, I guess, or only man in our family. And, a lot of iterations through that. I'm a mom, that's also part of who I am, my identity. And I'm still a lover of language. I often say that if I had a specific religion, it would be language. I just believe in it so deeply, the power that it has to move people and to share and to connect people and to connect us to ourselves when we get really articulate with who we are and what we believe, and the power to bring people then in. And so, I enjoy this. The family, it feeds my work. It's definitely part of my brand today, but I'm really driven by language. And so finally, another brand I have is a co-founder and entrepreneur, something I never really thought I would do. But this is our team at Root and River, and I'm the co-founder of this brand strategy team. We do what we call intrinsic branding, which I'm going to teach you a little bit about today. And I just love that our team, again, it's 3 girls and 1 guy. My co-founder, Justin Foster, is there to my left, and Kat Weiss and Jen Lawhead. That we make up this team that really serves our clients and teaches you how to brand intrinsically. We're not prescriptive. We are kind of excavators, brand therapists. We go in and uncover what already exists and then help you articulate it using language and emotion. So that's a little bit about me. It's a little bit about my brand. And also, in each of these photos these are stories, right? So your brand is not just this brand, it's also a departure, point of departure for the story that you tell. So it's all about, what is a brand? It is all of those things. It's all of those stories, all of those moments sort of coming together. And in our practice, in our work, we believe that great brands are spiritual experiences. So they're not just things that, are static. They're not just, a Nabisco logo, but they are encompassing emotional experiences. So for example, I don't know if any of you have ever been to a Bruce Springsteen concert or a concert of your favorite band, but you can listen to a Bruce Springsteen recording. You can even listen to a record, which is a cool thing to do. But it's completely different than going to a concert and being enveloped by it's the sounds, the smells, and that unity that comes from experiencing Bruce's art, or whoever it is, their art and what they care about, and hearing basically their brand story. Bruce Springsteen talks a lot about being from a difficult place, coming out of that, feeling like an outsider, running away, coming home. These are all themes that he explores, really just ways of telling his own story. And we all get to be part of it, and we all get to be uplifted by being part of that experience. Another example of this is Disney, in particular, also kind of the same, Star Wars. So this is a picture of, and just check out the faces of these kids. So these are actually 2 of my kids, and then my nieces and nephew. We were in Disney together, and they got to meet Chewbacca the Wookiee. Was absolutely staggering. I mean, you can see my little one there with the braids, just like she couldn't even believe it. This is a girl who's seen every Clone Wars, like every episode, everything. So Disney does such a great job of creating this experience. I mean, look where they're standing. They could be in a set of the movie, but then also make it very personal, right? We had this chance to meet this character inside of his environment, and we kind of had to go through all these tunnels to sort of get there. So they're setting the stage, but they're consistent in that what Walt Disney was trying to do was to spark people's imagination. Same with George Lucas, was to take people on a journey away in a world that was apart but also deeply resonated. And so the experience of the Star Wars brand, or the Disney brand, is very inspiring, and it's very evocative, and it also rings really true to who we are as individuals. And so that's what great brands are, and they stay with us forever. So it's all about you. 3 U's. It's very cute. It's all about you. You are the brand, and you get to decide how to tell your story. But it does rely on these 3 specific aspects, and these three sort of principles about telling a compelling brand story. So the first one is to write a compelling brand story, you've got to know what you believe. You've got to know what you believe. So what we believe are really the things that we are willing to go into the streets for. for? Like, that's the way I really want to challenge you to think about. Sometimes we think we may believe in something, but over time, maybe that belief get faded. When you have a belief, you will literally get out of your comfort zone, speak up, speak against something. It's something that is so deeply rooted that essentially you're willing to defend it in a public way. Here's another example. So to write a compelling brand story, you've got to also know what your mission is. So this is Christina Koch. She just returned from space. She was in space for 328 days. And I love this picture because she's just come out of the Soyuz capsule in Kazakhstan, and she's just back on Earth. I'm a little bit of a space nerd, so I read books about that experience. And, she talked about, for her, it was really about being a source of inspiration. So it's sort of twofold. She got to do something that she had dreamed about since she was a child. She got to live something that she was hoping to be able to accomplish. She did, but then she said the real magic for her was knowing that she was then a person that other young people would look towards and model themselves after. And so she knew what her mission is. She knew the thing that she wanted to do from a young age. Now, that's wonderful. Most of us don't sort of wake up one day at age 8 or 7 and know what we want to do or what we're here to do. But the process of intrinsic branding is really digging in to sort of figure out what your mission is and then how you share that. And we're going to get into how you do that in a little bit. So the third thing you must know is you've got to know what your message is. So your message, great example here, is Oprah at the Golden Globes last year. Her message was crystal clear. I want to evoke in the minds of everyone watching and everyone in the room a new age. A new age is dawning where no one has to say the words "me too." She wanted to create that as a possibility, and she wanted to invite people into it. And if you go and you watch that video, you'll see in the last 15 seconds that she really emphasizes that message. We are here to create this new reality where nobody ever has to say "me too" again. And she invites men into it, and she invites women into it. And that she is crystal clear on her message. And also in interviews and in reading I've done around, what drives Oprah is really about telling stories herself. And so she's a phenomenal storyteller, but she always knows what her message is. So here are the 4 truths of branding. So we're gonna, message, and we want to write a story, but these truths are something that I want to challenge you with and to put out there so that you can kind of start incorporating and moving toward them, and it will help you write your story. And I love this photo of all the different patches. I think patches are a great way to express not just what a brand is, but sort of the spirit of an institution or an organization. So our definition of brand is how other people experience what you believe. So we're tying in that idea of experience, and we're tying in that idea of beliefs. So you have a belief, and then the way that you behave, that gives people the experience of your brand. And that happens regardless of if you're paying attention to it or nurturing it or not. It happens, it's happening today. It happened yesterday. So what we teach is how you can really become mindful of what those beliefs are, mindful of the way that you're behaving them, and that produces an experience for your clients, for your friends, for your family, that you are in full awareness and alignment with. And that becomes a kind of a superpower. So
Can
speaking
I
of super, yeah.
can I ask a question here? Because I think this is a really important one that people often miss, especially they maybe notice it because they'll finally go, oh, we should do some rebranding, right? But they're so eager to move on to a new iteration of the brand, they don't realize that people have already had this experience, regardless of whether or not it was, big, well-known, established brand. So where do you think that people, make missteps here? It would be a question that I'd be really curious to ask, because I think a lot of people don't realize they have a brand already sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest misstep is just sort of a reticence to acknowledge it and articulate what those beliefs are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we're taught to sort focus on the business, right? Make sure that that is healthy. And everything else will just sort of come on its own. And don't be braggy, don't be that guy out there. One of our mantras is, market unto others as you would have them market unto you. And I think sometimes we're so bombarded with marketing and promotion that we just give the whole category of my brand or my strategy, my marketing strategy, a bad name. And we're like, oh, if I'm good enough, people are for me enough, I don't really need to brand. So that's the main thing. And it's just ignoring. And a lot of times it's ignoring what truly makes you different and what truly makes you special. And that's a huge advantage. So that's probably the biggest misstep there.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, you're welcome. So John Cena. So I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but I am a fan of his because one of his mantras that he uses in his wrestling career is never give up. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a schmaltzy little tagline there. But in fact, when I dug into it a little bit deeper, this is a guy who has donated his time and donated over 600 wishes to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So it gives me chills every time I say it. He has taken his time. This is I think his 500th wish. He's taken the time to meet with children across the United States and give them this message. It's obviously part of his persona and his work, but it's also something that he is carrying through in his personal brand and how he chooses to spend his time outside of his work. And he says, it's really just it's like an honor for me to meet these kids who are embodying this idea of never giving up in a way that, I'm not. And just to kind of give them, if I can spend a moment with them that will change their lives or encourage them in their fight, it's just a blessing for him. So that is part of that experience, right? He's got this belief and persistence, and he's a scrawny kid, and now he's this pro wrestler with a lot of equity, both in his brand, his business brand, but in his personal brand as well. So brand is not a design, it's a practice. And I'm sure most of you on the call really realize that your brand is not your logo, it's not your color scheme. It's a practice. So this is me on the top of Humphreys Peak in Flagstaff, Arizona, where I live, just practicing a little yoga because why not? So I want you to think about brand as something that you do every day. Again, you are the brand. So every time you have an interaction, whether that's digitally or in person with somebody, you are practicing branding. I think there's this tendency, again, to be so overwhelmed and like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to brand. I don't want to market. It's too much. I don't know what to do. So I'm just not going to do anything. And, as you know, if you've pursued any kind of anything like learning how to play guitar or practicing yoga, it takes a mindset where you're like, okay, I'm going to continue to work at this and improve a little bit every time. And that's a space I invite you to hold for yourself when it comes to branding. Sharing your story, sharing your beliefs, talking through your message, those are all practices. You're not going to nail it the first time. It's not going to pay off the next day with 10,000 people waiting to work with you. But over time, a practice builds and it gives you an opportunity to grow. So part of being a practice is being intentional. And if you have ever practiced yoga, you know that you often will set an intention before your practice. And so the intention, again, it's around knowing your beliefs, aligning them to behaviors, thereby creating an experience, and then sharing that story over and over. So again, we call this intrinsic branding. And so the way this breaks down, Emily, what are beliefs? Like, how do we know? How does this all work together? So we created this drawing to help sort of solidify it for you. So all brands begin underneath the surface at the seed level. They begin with a seed, and the seed doesn't start growing until the seed is broken. So we have these moments in our life that break us. There's a lot of pain for be associated with being an only girl, feeling other all the time, right? We break, but that's where we begin to grow our root system. And we begin to grow, the seed always grows down first into the soil of soul. It's where our hopes, our passions, our fears, our rejections are, but it's also where our values and our beliefs come from. So this is what we call the beliefs level. So once the seed has established a healthy root system, it begins its journey upward and outside side of the soil, and eventually it unfurls with a little leaf. And at this stage, what's really important is that somebody walking by says, oh, there's something there, there's something growing. They can observe this plant and they can begin to make suppositions about what the root system may be like and what the plant actually is based on the behavior, so to speak, of the plant. So that's our behaviors level, that's the leaf. And then finally, if there's enough sunshine, enough water, and a really rich soil, we get this beautiful bloom with a fragrance and a gorgeous hue that unfurls at its own pace. But now it's a sensory experience. We can smell it, we can breathe it in, we can see it, and it's gorgeous to our eyes. And so this is a brand experience. We're not just observing, now we're part of this flower, we're part of this bloom, this whole plant. And so when these three things are in alignment and you know what your beliefs are, you're aware of them, and then you know how you're behaving them every day, you will produce this brand experience over and over for your clients and for your team, for the people around you. And it's so powerful to do so.
And I just
Madeline, you asked, oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to throw something in here and
Yeah.
you was about to do it because I can't resist. So Emily just will dabble beautiful drawings like this throughout her presentations. And she mentioned it here lately, but these are all an expression of who she is and her story and her soul and who, Root and River is as well as a company. And I just like, I mean, one of my beliefs is giving credit where credit's due and citing your stories. And I just always like to call out this amazing, beautiful work because I think this way of seeing branding is so important. It makes it real. It makes it so much more than just like an abstract concept on a page. And I just have to call out that, like, if you play with Emily's work, if you grab the workbook out of our member portal, that these drawings are all Emily bringing this story to life. So I just have to say.
Well, thank you. That's so nice. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, like, earlier, Madeline, you asked about missteps. And I think the biggest one in this that really this image evokes for me is that a lot of people will dig into like what their company values are, maybe even their mission. They'll dig into it, sort of uncover it a little bit, or maybe all the way, and then they kind of set it aside, right? And they think it's like separate from what they're doing every day, from their brand, from their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. Like, when we have this alignment, that's the difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
It's this extra step that most people don't take to move and connect that infrastructure to what they do every day. And when you do that, that is what the most successful brands in the world do. That's how they live.
And that's a perfect point.
Yeah.
So last month when we were exploring, because Emily and I use a lot of similarities, but we have a slight difference in language. And so Emily uses the word beliefs, which I equally love. And we talked last month about I call them core values in my work. And one of the biggest points we drove home in last month's session, which was about aligning your values to attract ideal clients, was this idea that those core values or those beliefs, they don't belong on a wall somewhere. They don't belong in a document or just on your website. And in fact, in the process of defining them, we said it's not a core value if you're not embodying it through the actions you're taking in the world, in your business, in your brand. And so that is like one of the biggest things, because I have been into so many beautiful office buildings where, because it looks nice, they're on a banner, they're on a wall, they're in a conference room somewhere. So they did the exercise, but then you look around and you see like, oh, the core value is taking care of our people. And then you see a bunch of broken people and you're like, are we embodying that core value through action? And so I love that you bring this up, because it's a misstep I see too. And I think that it's really, really important for us to say it's not an idea, it's an action.
Correct. Absolutely. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes we have to say, you know what, I'm out of alignment here. I'm not doing this as well as I could do. And be able to have that ability to reflect and to know what you're going for. Wonderful. So again, this is what we call intrinsic branding. Starts in the soil, starts inside, and goes out. In the 20th century, all branding was extrinsic. It was, who does the market want us to be? Not all branding, but most branding. In the 21st century, we believe that branding will be intrinsically based, and that's really the movement that we are starting. So number 3 of the 4 is that good branding repels. So just to go back to this drawing for a second. So when the bloom unfurls, magical things happen. Birds and bees and butterflies are attracted to the bloom, but there's also a bunch of creatures and critters that are repelled. And so this is one of the biggest eye openers for people, is that branding is much more about repulsion than it is about attraction. And that's how I invite you to think about it. So you are not for everyone, and everyone is not for you. Most people come to us like, oh, Emily, teach me how to like bring all of the people. I need all of the people. It's like, no, you don't. You don't need all of the people. You need to repel most of the people who do not believe what you believe efficiently and honestly before they come into your system and drain your time, resources, and energy. We've all been in that position of going, oh God, I have this client and it's just killing me. I've got to get rid of them. But if you practice intrinsic branding, you can repel these people before they ever come into your system. Doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it. Doesn't mean you have to be strident or rude or offensive. That's not the point. The point is, but when we come from our beliefs and we state them clearly, we infuse them into our message, then we can only have people who are already aligned in our system. And that's just a better, more sustainable, efficient way of operating. Lastly, branding works from the inside out. So I mentioned this a moment ago. We are not trying to figure out what everybody wants to hear. That's not your message. We are not trying to understand, what does our core customer want us to stand for? No, it's about everything that's going on inside of that shell, right? Who we believe we are, what we are willing to step out on the streets for, to step out of our comfort zone to defend. And it's about sharing that then outward. So it's branding is really an inside job. And gone are the days when you can create a manufactured reality, the Marlboro Man, Betty Crocker, and manipulate people's emotions to make them feel like they need this false construct. So those days are done. We can't do it anymore. So much better approach is to be inside out. I just want to pause here too and see if there's any other questions or anything that comes up for you, Madeline. Otherwise, I will dive into this distinction between branding and marketing.
We had a great one here that I think is really, really important. And it's something that, and this might surprise people, that I struggle with as well. So I'm really glad that Alexa shared this. She said, as an introvert, I really have a hard time with exposing myself as my brand. It feels narcissistic to me, especially on social media. And I just want to say, like, Alexa, I preach, because this is really hard for me. And I think particularly, I talk about in my work, we've moved into what I call this age of the influencer, and I'm really ready for it to die, because I don't like the idea of influencing people. I'm here to help people, but I also recognize we've got all these platforms to put ourselves out there these days. And that can be a very uncomfortable experience, especially if you're an introvert. And it can also be hard to define this distinction of like, what is me and what is my brand, particularly if we've got a business, but we're also the leader of that business. So share away there, Emily, because this is such a good question.
It is, and I struggle too. I consider myself an introverted extrovert, so I get a lot of energy from my time by myself. But I do love people. But and I've also been extremely humble in what you do. So from the minute social media started, I was uncomfortable to begin with, and I stayed away from it for years. And then I did move into that space and began sharing, but I tussle with this on a regular basis. I think the tussle and the conflict, or the conflict, basically feeling conflicted, is not a reason necessarily to stop, even though that feels comfortable. It's a reason to be mindful and thoughtful. And also, we have to push back against the idea, which is another hang up to your earlier question, Madeline, that we see over and over again. Probably the most common hang up that we see with our clients and also in the market is this idea that I am not special. And overcoming that idea is really difficult. And branding, putting yourself out there sort of requires you to mute that voice and to suspend your disbelief and say, I am special and what I have to say and what I share, what have to share is important. Um, we were talking yesterday to somebody we worked with for a year. She's really accomplished. She's a woman in biotech and science. She's got multiple degrees, and she's an expatriate living here from another country. Her perspective is so valuable. And she's like, guys, I'm still struggling, still struggling. So the struggle is real, but if one person can be helped with something that you feel compelled to share, then it really could be something that could change their world, our world. And so I think it's about, I think it's about being honest about it being a struggle and then continuing on anyway. That doesn't mean you have to be everywhere all the time. I'm certainly not. I'm only really active on Instagram. The other platforms I'll pop in once in a while. I sort of take a surgical strike approach. I kind of go in, do my thing, and I bounce that in and out. But you got to find the way that works for you and not listen to people who tell you you should be this or should be that.
And there's 2 or 3 other things that I want to offer here, because like I said, I've struggled with this so much myself. But as my company's grown, I've had a great team around me that's really pushed me to be like, you're the person, you got to be out in front of people. And then the more you put yourself out there, the more you have these moments where somebody you totally weren't expecting shows up in your inbox, or comes up to you after a speaking moment and says, oh my gosh, if you hadn't shared this information, I don't know where I'd be headed. This really had an impact on me. And that's a really humbling moment. And it's the one that like propels me to keep going. And also it allows me to realize that it's not about me at all. It's about them. It's about helping that person. And so there's a woman whose work I follow and I respect, Marie Forleo, and she gets really aggressive about this one. She goes, you're robbing people. If you have this important, special thing you're supposed to share and you're not putting yourself out there and you're not playing big, you're stealing from the people who need to hear you. And I'm like, whoa, but that's true. And so that's, that these are just some of the ideas that help me push when I'm feeling that discomfort. Is my team encouraging me, looking for that person we're impacting, and then also really knowing that, like, if I'm not sharing, there's somebody who needs what we have to offer, and so we need to be putting it out there.
Yeah, it's that quote, don't die with the music still inside of you. So if you have a symphony inside, you've got to share it. Yeah, wonderfully said. So branding versus marketing, people get really tied up here. And I just want to make this very quick distinction for you just to have in your back pocket. So branding is knowing what conversations you want to have, right? It's knowing that you are so dug in on this belief, on this mission, on this message. This is the conversation I want to not just have, but like own in the market. That's what branding is. Branding is like, for Written River, intrinsic branding, like we want to inspire leaders to go inward. That's our mission. And our message is, hey, every great brand is a spiritual experience. Those are the conversations we want to have. Marketing is how you go out and have those conversations. So I choose to be really active on Instagram. That's a marketing function, right? We have a newsletter. That's a marketing function. It's ways of having that conversation. So I'd just like to make that distinction for people.
That's a really important distinction. And it kind of ties into a question I had come in from Dan. Dan asked, is it more about sharing your message and then creating recognition for yourself? And I think, this slide really answers it. It's like, you've got to know what that message is first. That's the brand. That's knowing the conversation you have. And then marketing yourself in the world to get recognition for being the person who has those kind of conversations. And I think particularly for anybody, and Emily, you could speak to this, who wants to be almost a thought leader on these certain topics, this is a really, really important distinction.
Yes. Yeah. To answer Dan's question, I think that it is through the message that you build the brand. So the message builds the brand. And that's how you steer clear from the prior question of it being narcissistic. Like, it's not Emily. It is Emily, but Emily is saying, Language is important. Brands are spiritual experiences. That's what I stand for. That's the space I want to share. Those are the inspirations I want to give to, another little girl out there who's reading in her room, and or a young woman who is thinking about, writing a book or doing something that's big and bold. So yeah, it's through your message, through your mission. That's how you create the brand. So let's get into brand story. So as I was preparing for this, I was like, okay, let's dissect brand story. It was kind of exciting. So again, thank you for the opportunity, Madeline. So brand story is a narrative that explains where you've come from. It's a little home over there, where you're headed, and then why you are on this journey. So it's basically the story of where you've come from, where you're headed, and why you're on this journey. So let's break this down a little bit. They're here to create love and trust, and that's how we do that, by sharing this story. And again, this moves it away from just being all about you. People have an opportunity to, engage with whatever they want to engage with. They can buy whatever they want to buy from anybody they choose to buy it from, but people buy from individuals they love and trust. And so we have to get vulnerable in sharing these aspects of our story. So I'm actually going to skip through these real quick just to kind of go here. So where you came from. I love this photo. I was like, speaks to me. Where you came from, it's the beginning of your story. It's sort of your origin, but it's also your beliefs. It's really, that's the soil. That's what makes us who we are. So we want to begin our brand story by sharing a little bit of where we came from, as I did in the beginning of this presentation. So here are some ways, and I kind of dig into this more in the handout that we created for today's presentation. So to get there, to get beneath the soil, here are some questions that can help you. What have you always believed that no one ever taught you? So we come into this world with a set of beliefs that are not taught to us. So a good way to think about this one is, and when you were a kid or when you were younger, did you ever get in trouble for something and you were sort of like, wait, I don't even know why I'm in trouble for this.
All the time.
It didn't make sense to you, did you? What was yours? What was it?
I spent the joke in our family is that my dad's budding legal career started defending me in the principal's office.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I always got in trouble for disappearing into my room for hours at, on end. Where is Emily? And there I am, creating all these worlds.
Yeah. Mine was, I would get in trouble for fighting. I was a tough little cookie, but it was always a fight to defend somebody or something I believed in. So my brother was super shy and really, really introverted, and he hung out with a lot of girls. He was just a sweet little boy who didn't play sports, and people would pick on my brother, and he's my older brother, and I would get in trouble for fighting all the time, defending my older brother, because I didn't feel like it was right for people to pick on him. So it's
can I dive into that?
Yeah, go
for
with
a second as an example. So what we try to do with our clients is take these little nuggets and then uncover one word that sort of embodies that belief, and that becomes a core value or belief. So I would, based on that story, I would suggest that maybe it's a belief in justice. Yeah. And I see that in you.
You're caught onto anybody. I call it equality. But in last month's session, I did this little visual. It had a brain. I'll have to send it to you. And coming out of it were just some of my personal core beliefs, and then we talked about my brand core beliefs. And one of them was the set of scales, And so for me, I was raised by parents who were just everybody deserves to be treated fairly and equally.
Yeah.
And but that was also I felt in myself a lot before anybody taught that to me. And so a lot of these moments where I was standing up and fighting for the people, it was it is not fair to treat this person differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll know when you dive into these questions, when you start to get emotional, which I heard in your voice, and you start, and also laughter, I was always in trouble for this, and you'll feel the right word in your body. People are sometimes over intellectualizing what these core values need to be. Don't spend too much time trying to figure out the right word, just see if it resonates here. So equality is the right word for you, not justice. And so for everybody listening, that's how you really get to those one words.
That was
Another one here is what are you working to instill in others? If you have children, I always think of this as like, my kids don't have to believe exactly what I believe, but before they leave my house, they must know that I believe in this. And then they can do what they wish with that. But doesn't have to be kids. It can be people you're mentoring. You know, before this person moves on to the next opportunity, I want them to know this. So those are some breadcrumbs you can follow. And then obviously you saw the slide earlier. What is something you'd commit civil disobedience to defend? So think Rosa Parks, think of, the Women's March, think of whatever would really get you out there in the streets and sort of dig into that belief.
I want to ask our attendees here to get a little vulnerable and share as you see these questions, what is coming up for you? And it doesn't have to be every single thing. And I know some of you did a little bit of this work last month too. So we're weaving in this work of really understanding these values and beliefs, because this is the key foundation. Great brands have this and then they embody it in the world. So I'd love to hear from anybody like Dan, Alexa, Rachel, like what are you guys seeing and feeling, when you look at these questions? What are the words that are coming up for you? I know for me, it was equality. Another one that we have inside of our brand, it is about accessibility is another one. So I'm seeing one here, for example, somebody's sharing, for me, it's connection. So feeling like maybe in your brand, it's really important to create these moments where people are having interface. And this is a really important one because some businesses, we're out in the world and, we're a little disconnected these days, quite honestly. And so I love this idea of like connection. Where are you creating connection? Why does that matter to you? And maybe that's from a story of being lonely. I don't know. I'm not going to force anybody to get any more vulnerable than the words that come out. Twyla, thank you for sharing, Twyla. Twyla shares authenticity. Empowerment is another one I'm seeing here. These are great, strong words. Thank you guys for sharing.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Awesome. So again, we want to try to call those down to sort of a one-word statement. Now, in our work with our clients, what we do from there is we create a little mantra for each belief, and that kind of extends out into the brand. It's sort of a different topic, but I just wanted to state that, like, sometimes creating these little mantras help us to make sure that we are holding true to those beliefs. Quick example there is for Root and River, one of our core beliefs is around defiance. So both co-founders are pretty defiant people. But our mantra for that, our kind of statement is find the flow and fuck the formula. We don't want to be formulaic in anything we do. We also want to adjust and customize for our clients. So that's how we embody it. And sometimes, there are times where we're like, maybe we're leaning too heavily on that, or maybe we're not measuring up, but it gives us a way to really measure if that core belief is playing out. So the next thing is mission, right? So the way we define mission, or mission in the context of brand story, is where you're headed. So you got here using your sense of justice or equality or your connection, your empowerment. You believed in those things. That was what was in the soil. But where are you going with that? So this is the thing you're here to do that only you can do, right? It's Christina Koch, like going to space and staying there for a year. What is it? And again, there's going to be pushback around, oh, that's so narcissistic. Only I can do it. But you have been given a specific set of skills, right? You've been given experiences, family, education, whatever it is, whatever mixture is in that pot of you, you're supposed to use that for a specific purpose. There may be other people that join that purpose, but it is your mission. So that's what we're thinking about there.
Someone just shared, and it was at the tail end when we were talking words, but I think this is really a mission statement. Dan shared, we all have needs for more understanding financially, socially, and physically. I feel you should surround yourself with people that can build this with you. I strive to be a part of that, or to be part of that for the people in my tribe. So like that first sentence, we have needs for more understanding financially, socially, physically is so
Mm.
impactful in terms of a mission. Like,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
Dan, works in the accounting and finance space, and he knows how this connection is so important with clients. So
Yeah.
it was just funny, people are
Yeah.
listening and they're like, they're finding it. I love it.
Yes. Yes. Good job. I mean, you've got to dig into that, and these will help you do that, continue on that work, and you're getting there. So it's how are you, applying those beliefs, like you mentioned earlier, and what issue that goes to what issue or problem are you applying your beliefs to fight, adjust, or change? So it's, I think a lot of people maybe in the accounting space, just to dig into that a little bit, they're so used to serving others and being very analytical that sometimes they struggle to claim their own needs. So that's a little interesting thread from that comment. So maybe he's part of his mission is to help people understand and ask for the need. I don't know, just throwing it out there. And then how are you called to use your beliefs to better the world? So for Root and River, our mission is to inspire leaders to go inward. That's sort of like the big picture, but it's also something that we measure against every day. New opportunities come, we're like, does this serve the mission? And there have been times where it doesn't serve the mission, but it's really lucrative, and we don't do it. Or we say, you know what, we've gotten this far into the process of talking about an engagement, but it feels off and we're not mission aligned. We're gonna step back and allow somebody else in this. And it's funny what happens when you say no. People generally have more respect for you, and they're like, wait, well, let's find a project where we can work together. That has all pretty much always been our experience when we are navigating toward a mission, then and we're staying true to that. People that show up and want to support that, they're there. And then the people you say no to, they kind of sometimes they come back. So interesting.
And this is an important one too, to like, because we talked last month about the importance again of like aligning with the right clients. Like we've really got to focus on the right people.
Hmm.
And I call these sort of moments like business blinders. So the business blinders are anything that we can go like this and put on ourselves and make a really key decision. And one of the biggest decisions we make in business is, who are we going to work with? Who are our clients going to be? And so the mission is, okay, it's these people, it's business
Yeah.
blinders. And if it doesn't align with the core values, it doesn't align with the missions, it's always a no. It's always a
Right.
no.
Right.
And I think that can be hard for us sometimes if we're coming from a place of scarcity or we're new in business and we just want to build some base and grow some revenue, quite frankly. But I think it's really important
Mhm.
to think about this actually early on, because I've talked to so many businesses that didn't have this in the beginning,
Yes.
and they get to
Yes.
this really painful moment where maybe they do have a fair amount of clients, but if they really took a hard look, they'd fire at least half of them. So
Yes.
can you talk about that a little bit, like where
Hmm.
you've seen this show up, and maybe do a pro and con, like in a
Yeah.
company that really starts with these in as a foundation, we see this as opposed to, folks that have to come back and reestablish these elements.
Yeah. It's around when you have that alignment. It's almost like, to go back to the space analogy, sort of like the space shuttle rocket boosters, right? When you're aligned to mission at the beginning, and you're on the foundation of your beliefs, you take off, and there's a certain amount of work you're going to do to get your business going off the ground. But when you are aligned and you're still taking on maybe not the work that you love to do, but you like it, but over time you're headed towards the mission, and everybody who's on knows that. And so you're shedding weight as you go to get to the moon, or to get into orbit, the International Space Station. When you don't know what that mission is, you take off, and then you're not sure when to eject those boosters. They may hamper your growth. They may keep you down because you've held on to them for too long. You may be stuck at the top of the atmosphere at basically a limit because you haven't had that navigational integrity. And you're constantly making adjustments in your business. What this does when you have it nailed down, it just gives you this beautiful foundation that you can return to. That doesn't mean it's not iterative. Our beliefs have changed slightly. They've been, fine tuned. along the way, along our 5-6 years in business, but we never really strayed from what our mission is. And the core beliefs are essentially the same. Yeah, so you can do it later for sure, but it's better to do it as early as you can, and to really, again, don't think of it as done. Think of it as a practice that you return to.
It was beautiful. As you're speaking, another metaphor came to life. Dan shared, before we can get to the flower, we might have to trim some of the leaves that are sucking the nutrients from our core base to get to where we want to be. I was like, that.
Well done, Dan. I'm going to use
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Screenshot saved.
Yes.
All right.
That's
awesome.
awesome. Cool. So the last piece of this is message, right? I talked about Oprah at the Golden Globes a couple of years ago. So that's really why you are on this journey. That's like the moment, right? It's stepping out and saying, we're doing this. This is what we're doing. Join us. So a few years ago, a couple of years into Root and River, we kind of had a rough patch, and we were just not closing deals. It was a tough summer. It was summertime. Things tend to slow down, and we kind of had this come to Jesus sort of talk. My business partner and I, our co-founder, Justin and I, and we're like, okay, what do we do? Do we want to keep doing this? Are we still on board? And we were like, you know what? Our message was in one place, and we said, you know what? Again, we're defiant, so like, screw it. We're gonna double down. We're gonna take our message and we're gonna say what we really want to say. And if we go down in flames, then that's what happens. But we're going to take this message and put everything into it and see where we go. Okay. And we haven't really looked back since, from a growth standpoint. It didn't happen the next day, but and we switched to this: great brands are spiritual experiences. And we have been preaching that message. It's the first thing I say when people ask me what I do. It's on our website homepage. It's that consistency, that clarity that comes, and it's an invitation after that. So your message is what your heart has to say to the world. It's not, what everybody wants to hear to make them feel warm and fuzzy. It's what you have to say. And it's a call to action. It's a rallying cry. Thankfully, people have become a lot more receptive to this idea of business being spiritual, branding being spiritual. But when we started saying it 4 years ago, people were like, this is crazy. So branding is not for the faint of heart. And neither, as is business, but branding works best for those who are bold enough to really declare something.
And I'm gonna jump in and brag real quick about Emily's success that's happened since that moment, because that doubling down can be a very scary place. I reached this kind of at the end of 2018, and anybody who follows my content has read that piece about, values shape vision, and kind of having to come back to the vision to really push ahead in the business. Because especially as entrepreneurs, there's always like fear that whether or not we've got a good handle it, that can show up at moments, particularly as moments where the clients aren't landing, the deals aren't closing, and we wonder, is it me? Do I have to change who I am? And as Emily said, this is not about changing ourselves to meet other people. It's about speaking so loudly about who we are and what we have to offer that the right people see us and go, oh, you're the person for me, or you're the company for me. And so I just think this is really important. And Emily, since that moment, has been speaking all around the country, working with major corporations, both locally and throughout the world at this point. She's written a book recently. I like meant to bring it and show it to you guys, but I've been reading it. So it's on my bedside table upstairs. Her and Justin just published a book. They, get to say no to whoever they don't want to work with and only say yes to who they want to serve, and have a phenomenally recognized business that may or may not be speaking at South by Southwest in a couple of weeks. So like, people who really are brave enough to say, like, hell yes, this is who we are and this is what we're doing, and we're going to double down and put it out in the world. This is a moment where things shift, and it takes, overcoming fear to play really big. And so I would say, if you're somebody who's been sharing like what you think your brand is supposed to be, and maybe playing inside the boundaries and not putting a lot of yourself out there and not seeing the results you want, this could be a really important moment to look and say, how can I bring myself and my beliefs to life really inside the brand? So rant over, but I think that's a really important
Thank
point
you.
to make.
Well, thank you for all that kindness there. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it is about being bold in it. And if you feel scared and uncomfortable, that's right. That's how it's supposed to feel. Unfortunately, gosh darn it. I would much rather it felt just fabulous every time. But you get there. Again, it's a practice. So for message, this quick little rubric, every message is simple. So don't go fishing around for a complex idea. If you got to run on sentence, we're not there. It's a simple idea. It has to be unexpected. So we are inundated with information. We get 4,000 to 6,000 requests for action every single day. So it has to be something that breaks through that. And then it's got to be emotional. And here's the trick on that. It has to be emotional for you first. So it has to evoke something in you, because you cannot transfer that emotion to another human being. Well, you can't transfer any emotion unless you feel it first. So you are your first audience. And so this statement has to be simple, unexpected, and emotional. It has to be a hell yes from you. Otherwise, you won't be able to practice it and you won't be able to transfer that emotion. So can it be simple and not emotional? No. Can it be simple and unexpected but not emotional? No. It's got to be all three of these. And that's when you know you've got a message. So this, and a little bit more on message here, you want to be speaking the unfiltered truth, right? So oftentimes we'll give the scenario of you're about to go speak, but right before you do, you take 3 shots of tequila. So this is a loosening of the tongue. It's a lowering of the inhibitions. And that's what we're going for here. And feel free, if you're playing with these concepts, you're listening later, whatever you're doing, is to take it all the way to the edge. And then you can sit a little bit and maybe dial it back in a notch. But take it all the way out there first. Say what you really want to say and then look at it. And if you're like, oh, but it's a negative, when I say is like, yo, people, that's okay. Start there, and then you can reverse engineer to a positive statement. You're wanting to make an emotional connection. Now, we all tend to think, oh, that means everyone's like, yeah, you're awesome. No. Again, we're trying to repel. So most people will be like, this person's crazy. Take that for granted. The emotional connection can be repulsion. It should be. Because the 5 people who are saying hell yes, they're going to come talk to you afterwards, and that's what we want. And it will, again, attract those people who believe what you believe. So they're already bought in, they're already sold. You don't even need to sell them. It's just a matter of getting the right dollar amount and timing. So weaving it all together here. How do these, sorry, I'm like skipping past a couple things. Weaving in the brand story starts with where your story begins, the beliefs, right? Where did I come from? What are the beliefs that fueled me? Where you're headed, that's your mission, what you're here to do, that only you can do, and why you're on this journey. So I'm going to give you an example based on the things I've talked about and shared about me. So since I was a child, I've always believed in defiance. I also got in trouble for getting all dirty, scabbing my knees, ruining the dresses that my mom would make for me, because I was defiant enough to try to hang with my brothers and all of their friends and go on bike rides and catch bullfrogs in the river. And I was terrified the whole time, but I didn't want to be left out. So this belief in defiance, I started with this belief in defiance. I have parlayed that belief in defiance. I've combined it with my love of language, and I'm headed to a place where all leaders know to go inward first, and they know who they are on the inside before they go outside with their brand. And that's why I'm here to encourage everyone, inspire everyone to understand that great brands are spiritual experiences. And if you believe in that, like, join us at Root and River, like, be involved. So that's just an example of how these things tie together to tell a brand story and to tell an origin story.
I want to share a side here too on social media, because social media is something that, a lot of people, I would say, almost feel obligated at this point to do. And I love that Emily shared earlier that she's like, I participate on Instagram and I show up other places where I feel called, where and when I feel called to. And I had gotten to this point as, you know, a millennial marketer where I was feeling like, particularly on my personal Instagram, like I was just having to post just to post. And then one of my beliefs in marketing is like, we never create marketing for marketing's sake. Like we create marketing that matters, that serves a clear purpose, is here to help someone. And so I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm just posting on Instagram just to post, there isn't a purpose. That's why this feels so crummy to me. And it became really burdensome and it just felt bad. And so I went back because I remembered last year I was really actually enjoying the process of sharing on social, particularly as I was really launching, you know, Fearless in Training more publicly out into the world. And I looked back at old posts and I was like, oh, these are all telling a story about the mission I'm on and why I'm on this journey. This is, you know, and it was like, oh, this is storytelling. And Emily and I both share this thing of like, we're storytellers at our core. And so it allowed me to reframe my sharing on Instagram as, oh, I only need to show up here when I've got a story to tell that serves a purpose and is here to help other people. And sometimes that's to connect with, you know, content I'm creating or programs my company's launching, but sometimes it's just so that they can know who I am as a person and why I'm here on this platform. And that really shifted and made it feel less narcissistic. It made it feel real. And interestingly enough, when I returned to that, a lot of people started showing up on my doorstep and reaching out and engaging with what I was creating. So I think that's a really, really important one in the context of the social media space.
Absolutely. And sometimes too, going right along with that, like we think, we as human beings, we are divided selves, and we divide ourselves up into these different categories. And you know, what I believe is separate from what I do, and none of that's true. We are one self, and we have to move toward being less divided. And so we can be less divided with this. Like each one of these, 1, 2, 3, can also be things that you're sharing on social. Like you can just share about your beliefs. You know what? One of my beliefs is in love. And here's why. Number 2, you know, here's what our mission is. This is what we're pursuing in the world. That's a post. Sharing your message, why you're on this journey, that's a post in and of itself. So sometimes these come together in one story that you're telling, maybe from the stage or with a prospect, or maybe they're individual pieces, or maybe they're inspiration points. Maybe you're not telling this you're not talking exactly about beliefs, but you're showing it. One of my core beliefs is in beauty. So I often will just, and that's an easy one for me to be on social with, because like I have a hashtag I use sometimes that's beauty is everywhere. So one time I was in a parking garage of all places, and there was all these water stains that had kind of gone down the wall in such a cool way. They created all these amazing lines on lines. And I took a picture of it and I'm just like, beauty's everywhere. It's an easy one, but it's really tied into, because it's tied into my beliefs, I get a lot more energy from sharing something like that. Well, that's the hit. That's the secret. Like that's the secret ingredient in all this is, when it's something you give a shit about, you want to share it. You feel good doing it, and it doesn't feel like narcissistic.
I love that.
So again, I put this in the handout. I put this in the packet for all of you. So another way to weave these together, I've always believed in, you know, fill in those one word core values beliefs. Using these beliefs, I'm working to blah, 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 add your mission right there. And then I'm on this journey because I believe, and then you put your message right in there. So I like to take everything that we uncover on a soulful level, right? It's kind of esoteric and deep and ephemeral, and make it super practical. And so this is literally a conversation that you can have. This is language you can use. Our words of mouth are so powerful to express about your brand, to tell your brand story. So I encourage you all to do that, whether you're listening right now, you're with us right now, or you're listening back later. Like, use this, play with it. Doesn't mean you're going to get it right the first time. Give yourself lots of grace, but think about how you can blend this into a conversation.
Yeah. And if anyone feels bold, if you heard all of these shares and it's just come right out the gate and you feel compelled to share it because it's something you give a shit about, uh, throw it in the chat and we'll share it out. But this is a process. This is such an important one, and that's why we record this content. This is why we put the workbooks in the member portals, is so you can revisit these materials and keep unfolding over time.
Yeah. Again, it's a practice. So let's discuss. I don't know if any of you remember Linda Richman, Mike Myers on SNL. Let's discuss coffee talk. Any questions, comments, rude remarks? I don't get it. What is this? I'm a little bit from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Let's if you have anything, if you need help honing something.
I saw a good one come in, and I think it's a great kickoff discussion, and I'll just keep queuing them up as I see people,
Go.
marinate and add. But the one that came up was coming back to this idea of repelling, because I think sometimes this is really confusing, and it feels like the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yes.
And so somebody said, if I'm in a market that is new and I don't really know well, how do I, put myself out there in the right way without, like, there's a fear of repelling everybody, basically, or there's a fear of, I don't know if I'm in the right market, and I don't know if that means like geographic market or maybe just the audience they're serving, that I might repel all the people. and so,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
it's,
definitely.
kudos to Stephanie for sharing this, because this is a bold personality kind of moment. But
Sure.
talk about that, if because and where I've seen this show up in myself, this is like an insecurity, is I am a loud person.
Mhm.
And even though I'm an introvert, I have a loud voice. And I used to be told, you need to be quiet.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I have a fear sometimes that if I'm in a room and I'm speaking loudly, that I'm bothering people, or that I'm repelling people. So that's just one story
Yeah.
that comes up for me. But Emily, what do you say to people when you teach this?
Um, I think that's a normal fear. And I praise the person, Stephanie, I think it was, for sharing it, because once we share our fears, they shrink. We've never in our 5 years of practice run into a client that everybody went away.
Mm,
We have run into clients where they were in the wrong space to begin with. They
mm,
knew it, or they were wrestling with that idea. And when they began branding in this way, a whole new market showed up that was different from their initial market.
mm,
So it's a great way to test whether or not you're in the right space and you're talking to the right people. Long term, if we all make adjustments, we all make modifications, right, every day. But the trouble with adjusting our behavior or what we believe is that over time, that's not really a sustainable solution for us. It will cause stress, it'll manifest in pain, it will steal your joy in your work.
mm,
So, again, beginning with what you believe, it will repel some people. I highly doubt it will repel everyone, um, but it's so much more sustainable, and
mm,
it gives you the opportunity to find your true market. And if you know that from the beginning, if you've got 5 core clients who believe what you believe and are aligned, that's a great place to start with, rather than 25 people who just are in a commodity mindset. They
mhm,
just want the cheapest thing as fast as they can get it. And they don't have any loyalty to you. Again, love and trust. And that's what it comes down to. I
mm.
mean, Patagonia is sort of a good example of this.
Totally.
Yvon Chouinard was asked, why don't you do projections and annual reports and all that? And he said, our clients tell us how successful we're going to be. And that's what we gauge upon. So my advice is to really hone in on those 1 or 2 clients you feel that love and trust and connection with, and
Mm,
sort of in your mind or even in person, like test. We don't really believe in test messaging, but have a conversation with some of these deeper ideas in mind with them and just see how they react. A lot of this is overcoming our own fear of being human fear, very deep human fear. I was listening to a podcast about our fear of rejection last night, and how it's proven to really we overestimate the amount of rejection that we will receive. And so this has been proved in a lot of studies over and over again. This is on Hidden Brain, by the way, which I'm super nerd on Hidden Brain. Love
I
that show.
love that podcast. It's like,
Oh,
I'm Shankar Vinanda, and I'm like, yes,
oh
you
my God.
are. I get so excited when
Super crush on Shankar. Like, oh, I can't, like, I just like can't even.
we're
But we overestimate the amount of rejection that we will receive. So just know that and test it out on someone you love and trust. See what happens.
So that brings up a question. So there's two things I can do. One is, Alexa shared something which I'm like, again, oh girl, you're getting it. Repelling can happen by defining your niche clearly.
Mhm.
And this brings up something that I talk a lot about, and we've talked a lot about, Emily, which is the difference between verticalization and niche. And I think
Mhm.
this is really important because a lot of people I know, particularly in the accounting finance space, we're really focused on like, I'm going to serve this industry and that's
Mhm.
going to be, my niche. And I was like, that's not necessarily right, because niche isn't just an industry, it's a lot more than that. And so it was when I talked to a firm and she said, oh, um, I only serve creatives that are starting their first business and they are at a point where they're now making over 100 grand. And so they need tax resources. That's a niche.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
a creative is a type of person. It's not necessarily an industry. And so I think it's really
Mhm.
important that if you do focus on an industry, that's just one piece of the niche. Who are the people
Correct.
within that? Because you're still not going to serve all construction companies. There's a million
Right.
different ones. There's a million different lawyers. And I joke with people, I'm like, you can be a graphic designer and be a great person and be a graphic designer and be an asshole. The only common denominator there is that you're a graphic designer, but I don't want to work with one of you.
Right.
you
Right.
know and
Yeah, when the brand experience sucks because you're a jerk, no one wants to
yes,
work with you. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
talk about this and how you help
Mhm.
clients move through, particularly if their past brand had just been about an industry and not about something a little deeper than that.
Yeah. Well, companies don't buy anything and they don't sell anything. Humans do. So
Mm,
we buy from humans, we buy from other human beings. And so the way that we come at this is through this idea of ideal audience. Like, who is your ideal audience as a person, as a human being? And we take a kind of a psychographic approach to that. We basically put zero stock in demographics anymore. That way of branding and marketing. There's a lot of people still making a ton of money off of it, but it's not the way we purchase anymore. Um, so what we do is we dig into the soul of that person,
mhm,
and we want to understand, what they're seeking at a deep soulful level. So we help our clients create a category that taps into an unspoken, a deep need that they have, that these individuals have, and then kind of tap into their resources as well. What's really important about that is that where you should start with that is thinking of a real person that you love working with, that is energy positive. So let's
mhm.
bring to mind that person, and then let's really go in depth with who that person is. Demographics aside, not interested in that, but who they are, what they're seeking. One question I love to ask is, what are they neglecting? And
Yeah.
this goes beyond just business. What are they neglecting in their lives? Get curious about who they are as people. And that gives you also an indicator of how much you know them, how much you really know them. And so it gives you an opportunity too to dig into that. But absolutely, like just going for an industry, which I think has been a strategy that has been over preached and over farmed for the last, 20, 25 years, particularly in the accounting field. I say you can't do it anymore. You've got to understand the human being that you are working to attract and then speak to that. Actually, we encourage our clients to name that, to give them a handle, and that's how we do it. I am looking for blank blank, these kind of people, just like your example, Madeline. So in our business, we're looking for defiantly driven leaders. We call them defiers. So they want to change the world with their brand. They want to do it their way. They're very collaborative. So those are some of the top 3 traits. We have about 5 or 6 of them that we look for, and that's who we speak to, and that's who we define our content around. Typically, they're in driven organizations. So that's more another layer. Um, but yeah, it's all about the human being. So start with the human beings you love working with.
So that you just teed us perfectly, because I know that this layer of work of really defining who those humans are, not just like they're not an avatar out, somewhere. They're actual people out there that
Mm-hmm.
match who you are here to serve. And you've just got to really figure out who those people are so that you can speak clearly to serve them. Um, Emily
Mm-hmm.
created a course recently, and it is
Mm-hmm.
full of of resources like this to help you do this process, because I know a big part of, the Root and River mission is to create change, and part of the ways they can do that is reaching more people. And of course, is an awesome way to do that. And so I'm going to just tell people, like, we've still got time for Q&A, but I haven't seen any new ones come in. So if you do want to ask a question of Emily, please take a moment to do so. But in the meantime, Emily, will you share with us a little bit about the course that you and Justin recently launched? And then I'll talk about, how our members can get access to it.
Yeah, you bet. So one more item before I
Yeah.
forget
Oh, yeah.
on the audience. I just came to me as you were speaking.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I forgot this. So this is another kind of switch in your thinking. So your audience or your niche, it's not the people that you're looking for. It's the people that are looking for you.
Ooh.
They've already had life in their world and they're out there trying to find you. So this goes to the importance of message. If you're not speaking your message, you're not sharing your beliefs, they can't find you because you're mixed in with everybody else who looks the same. So just a little twist on that. Yeah, the course, I'm so excited because we get to be present for people in this way, and that's really the driving force. So it's called How to Brand Yourself When You Don't Really Want to. So I'm feeling you. I don't really, before I started down this journey of branding, I was in your seats, literally. I'll be behind the scenes. I was a journalist for 8.5 years. I was used to taking notes. I was used to telling other people's stories. That was totally my jam and my comfort zone. I didn't want to be a personal brand. I didn't want any of that. However, this process of intrinsic branding, it takes people in that moment where they're at and helps guide them in this inner journey to determine your beliefs, to determine your message, to determine your mission. So we've got 2 courses out as part of that. Course 1, there's 5 modules, and included there's course workbook, as well as some other resources. There's a video with each lesson, and then you can use the workbook to work through these exercises. It's super interactive for you to be guided to really understand and articulate this foundation. And then we go into, again, practical, go from spiritual to practical. So how we tell those stories, we have some work on crafting compelling content based on what you uncover, and just both the courses together, it's going to give you a really good foundation. And we're super accessible. So if you run into hiccups or roadblocks, reach out to us on social or, directly by email, and we'll support you in that process.
And I love it. And Learning Lab members are super blessed, because when I approached Emily about doing this session and about the course, I was like, so here's the thing, I like to promise something special for my people, which means that all of our Learning Lab members get a 25% discount off of this course, which is kind of a big deal, you guys, because Emily and Justin are a big deal. The level of clients that they're working with, the level of brands they're shaping these days, this is a really, really valuable material to get access to. And I think what's so important about it is that it makes branding accessible. I think for a lot of folks, we still think, oh my God, I'll get to that point someday and I'll hire a big agency and they'll come in and they'll do this for me. When, everything that Emily said here today is, this is a process you have to do and you have to practice. And she's giving you the tools to be able to do that. Justin's helped out too. So they're giving the tools to be able to do that. So please check it out. And if you have questions about it, let us know. And then also check out the other materials in our Learning Lab member portal. So Emily and Justin have been kind enough to share with us other content. I've been dog-earing Emily's book of this is an article I want to share. This is an article I want to share. The recording from this session is going to go into your member portal. So there's so many resources in there. And we've been really focused this quarter on this idea of the foundation of the brand. And so we're adding content to that resource center to help you uncover the answers to all these important questions we're asking. And 2 last things I'm going to say, unless I see a burning question pop in, are: 1, thank you so much to Emily. It's an honor to have you here. It's an honor to get to share stories with you. It means so much for our people, our audience, to get access to you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And then the last piece for all of you is that if today's session, whether you're watching live or it's a recording after the fact, if this meant something to you, if this was a moment where you really had a light bulb go off, you loved Emily's work, you loved the format, whatever that was, please, if you feel compelled to share, if there's somebody you want to send a little email to, or if you feel like, this is a story I want to tell on social, please help us spread the word about the Learning Lab, because we've designed it to be super accessible. We've designed it for ambitious entrepreneurs, and we've designed it for doers, really, people who want to dig in and do this level of work. So if you know people like that and you can help us spread the word, that would be so appreciated. Um, and thank you for everyone who's extending the thank yous. There's been some nice words coming in through the chat as I was saying that. So
Good.
thank you all for your time. And if you have questions that pop up after the session, reach out to me and the team. We can get in touch. We can get you in touch with Emily, and we can go from there. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you, everyone. And have an amazing rest of your day. So that's it. That's your session on writing your brand story. I hope it was super helpful for you. I know I even learned a lot listening to Emily, and there was so much material here. So make sure that you know that, again, branding is this practice. So you can come back and revisit these materials anytime, revisit the workbook. And if this was something you loved, make sure to leave a note here. Give us a comment or email me and the team at hello@fearlesssayingtraining.com to let us know what you thought. Spread the word. If this session was super valuable to you, let somebody you know about Learning Lab so they can get access to this incredible content. And also keep an eye out for all the additional resources we're going to be providing. We've got the resources section with additional education, articles, all of these different materials the team and I are curating for you. So make sure to keep an eye out for those things, because we're going to be bringing in even more branding content to support you along your journey. All right, reach out if you guys have questions, and until the next session, thank you so much for being a part of the Learning Lab.